Turn the car around now, Richard. My voice was so loud that my husband almost crashed into another vehicle on the interstate. My hands were trembling as I held the plain black duffel bag my son had asked me to bring. Inside it, hidden among innocent clothes, was something that would change our family forever. For 15 years I helped my son financially. I sacrificed my savings. I lent him money that he never returned. But I never imagined he would be capable of this. My name is Martha. I'm 67 years old. And I always believed my greatest purpose in life was to help my family. My husband, Richard, and I worked our whole lives to save for a comfortable retirement. Our only son, Jason, who is 42, had lost his job 6 years ago. And since then we lived in an endless cycle of loans that deep down I knew would never be repaid. It all started with small requests. Mom, can you help me with the rent this month? I promise I'll pay you back when I get paid. Soon came the water and electricity bills, my grandson Timmy's school supplies, the payments on the new pickup truck they couldn't afford to buy. Before I knew it, I was supporting his entire family. Jason's wife, Brenda, always treated me with a cold politeness. She never showed genuine gratitude for the sacrifices we were making. I saw the way she would roll her eyes when I mentioned that we needed to be more careful with money, as if it were my obligation to keep funding their lifestyle. 2 months ago, when they asked me for $25,000 to enroll Timmy in a private school because he was being bullied in public school, I finally set a limit. I can't anymore, son. Our retirement money is running out. We'll find another public school. Talk to the administration about the bullying. The look Jason gave me in that moment was as if I had betrayed him, as if saying no after years of saying yes was an unforgivable crime. In the following weeks, the treatment changed drastically. They no longer let me see Timmy on the weekends. When I called, they always had excuses. He's sleeping. We're just leaving now. He has a lot of homework. Every rejection was like a stab in my heart. Then 3 days ago the surprise came. Jason called, sounding more cheerful than he had in months. Mom, we're thinking of taking a trip upstate this weekend. A friend lent us his cabin. We thought it would be great for all of us to go so Timmy can spend some time with his grandparents. What do you think? My heart raced with joy. Finally, a chance to see my grandson to fix things. Of course, son, we'd love to go. Great. Oh, and Mom, could you bring an extra bag for us? Our car is already full with Timmy's things. No problem, I replied without hesitation. On the morning of the trip, Jason and Brenda showed up with a plain black bag. Nothing suspicious about it. We put it in our car and agreed that they would follow right behind us on Highway 70 towards the cabin. We had been on the road for almost 2 hours when my cell phone rang. It was Jason. Mom, the bag we gave you, you didn't open it, did you? That question sent an instant chill down my spine. There was something strange in his tone. No. Why would I open it? For no reason. It's just, I love you, Mom. You know that, right? In 40 years my son had said those words to me maybe half a dozen times. And never like that, in that way, like a farewell. Jason, what's going on? Nothing, Mom. Just keep driving. We'll see you at the toll booth. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Something was terribly wrong. Richard, pull over. What? We're on the highway, Martha. Pull over now. I yelled. My husband pulled over to the shoulder. Jason and Brenda drove past us, honking the horn. I asked Richard to turn on the hazard lights as if we had car trouble. With my heart pounding, I opened the black bag. I moved aside some t-shirts, a child's pajamas, a Spider-Man colored pencil case that I recognized as a gift I gave Timmy for his birthday. And then at the bottom I found packages wrapped in black plastic. My blood ran cold. Even at my age, I knew exactly what that was. They were illegal substances, a lot of them. My God, Richard. I whispered, showing my husband. They were using us as mules. Jason and Brenda had planned to use their own parents to transport illegal substances, knowing that an elderly couple would probably not be searched as thoroughly at police checkpoints on the highway. The destination was never a cabin upstate. We were going somewhere to deliver the merchandise. Turn the car around now, Richard. Now! I screamed, feeling a mix of panic and rage I had never experienced before. My husband looked at me with wide eyes, but he didn't question it. He made a U-turn at the first opportunity. As I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw Jason's car stop and start to turn around too. What are we going to do? Richard asked, his voice trembling as much as his hands on the steering wheel. Call the police, I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. Our own son was willing to send us to jail, Richard. We have no choice. The moment Richard dialed 911, I felt as if I were betraying my own blood. But what choice did we have? If we were caught with that amount, we would spend our last years in a prison cell. Emergency. What is your situation? A female voice answered. Richard looked at me, his face as white as a sheet. I need to report an incident. Our son put illegal substances in our bag without our knowledge. We're on Highway 70 at mile marker 107, heading back towards the city. As my husband spoke, I saw Jason's car approaching at high speed in the rearview mirror. My heart leaped. Richard, they're coming up behind us. Ma'am, you need to stay calm, the voice on the other end of the line said. A patrol car is already being dispatched to your location. Do not confront the suspects. Continue driving normally if you can. Jason's car pulled up alongside ours, and he was gesturing frantically for us to stop. Brenda was in the passenger seat, her face twisted into an expression I had never seen before. Fear mixed with rage. Keep driving, I whispered to Richard. Don't stop. My husband accelerated, but our old car was no match for Jason's newer vehicle. He cut in front of us and slammed on the brakes, forcing Richard to stop to avoid a collision. My God, what do we do now? Richard seemed desperate, still holding the phone. Lock the doors, the dispatcher instructed. Do not get out of the vehicle. Jason got out of his car and ran to our window. His face was red, his eyes wild. He pounded on the glass. Mom, what are you doing? Why did you turn around? I squeezed Richard's hand, looking for strength. Don't open it, I begged him. Jason continued to pound. Mom, open this door. What happened? I looked into the eyes of my only son, the boy I rocked on feverish nights, who cried on my lap when he was rejected for the first time, who gave me my only grandson. Now at 42, he was willing to sacrifice his own parents to solve his financial problems. We know what's in the bag, Jason, I said loud enough for him to hear me through the glass. We called the police. His face transformed. Rage gave way to shock, then panic. You what? Are you crazy? This is going to destroy our lives. You were going to destroy our son, I replied, tears streaming down my face. Why did you do this? We owe money to dangerous people. Mom, it was the only way out. They were going to hurt Timmy. Brenda appeared beside him, grabbing his arm. Let's go, Jason, now. Philip looked at me one last time, a mix of fear and betrayal in his eyes. You've ruined everything, Mom. They ran back to their car and sped off, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. They're running. Anthony informed the police. Patrol cars are already on the way. What is the description and license plate of the vehicle? We provided the information, feeling as if every word was a stab wound to our own son. 15 minutes later, which felt like an eternity, 2 police cars pulled up beside us. We showed them the bag. We told them the whole story. I cried uncontrollably as I explained how we had supported our son and his family for years, how we had recently set boundaries, how he had planned this reconciliation just to use us as drug couriers. Ma'am, what you did today was very brave, an older officer said, his gaze compassionate. Unfortunately, we see many cases where criminals use the elderly and family members as mules precisely because they are rarely stopped at checkpoints. You probably saved your own lives today. I sat on the shoulder of the road, holding Richard's hand while they took the bag and recorded our statement. A female officer approached with a glass of water. And my grandson? I asked, my voice almost fading. Timmy is only 10 years old. He was in the car with them. We are searching for the vehicle now. If the child is with them when they are located, social services will be activated to ensure his safety. Sitting there in the middle of nowhere, between the open sky and the hot asphalt, I thought of all the times I had given in to Jason's requests, all the times I gave up my own needs to satisfy his. All the times I ignored the signs that something was wrong because I wanted to believe that my son was still the person I raised him to be. We're going to take you back home, the officer said. We need you to be available in case we have more questions. On the way back, I was completely silent, looking out the window at the landscapes that hours before had seemed so promising. Richard held my hand, his thumb making small circles on my skin, as he always did when I was distressed. Did I do the right thing? I finally asked, my voice breaking. What if they hurt Timmy? What if— Margaret, Richard interrupted me, his voice firm despite his watery eyes. They put drugs in our bag. They were willing to let us go to jail. That's not love. It's not family. You did the only thing you could do. But that night, alone in the bed I had shared with Richard for 45 years, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining where Timmy might be, if he was scared, if he would understand why his grandmother had betrayed his parents. The phone rang at 3:17 in the morning. I answered before the second ring. Mrs. Martha. It was the voice of the police officer. We found your son and his wife trying to cross the state line. They are in custody. And my grandson? I asked, my heart nearly pounding out of my chest. The boy is fine. He's with a social worker now. As the closest relatives, you have preference for temporary custody if you wish. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Richard and I sat on the small back porch, watching the stars disappear as the day dawned. We didn't need to talk much. After 45 years together, our silences said more than words. We're going to get Timmy, I finally said when the sun was already coloring the horizon. Are you sure, Margaret? Are we old enough to take care of a 10-year-old boy? I looked at my husband, at his calloused hands from a lifetime of work, at the eyes that now showed the weight of an unthinkable betrayal. What choice do we have? He's our grandson. I can't let him go into foster care or to a strange family. Not after all this. Richard nodded slowly. You've always had a heart bigger than the world. At 8 o'clock in the morning we were at the social services office. The counselor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, received us in her small stuffy room. Timmy is physically fine, but he is very scared and confused, she explained. He doesn't understand why his parents were taken by the police, or why he can't go home. What did you tell him? I asked. Just that there was a problem, and that we needed to find a safe place for him to stay for now. We think it's best that you explain it to him in the way you see fit. When Timmy walked into the room, my heart sank. He looked so small, so vulnerable in his wrinkled Batman t-shirt and messy hair. His eyes, so much like his father's, were red and swollen. Grandma. His voice was just a whisper. Where are my mom and dad? I opened my arms and he ran to me, burying his face in my chest as he did when he was smaller. I felt his tears soaking my blouse. Let's go home, my love, I said softly, stroking his hair. Let's go home and we'll talk there. Okay. On the way to our house, Timmy sat still in the back seat, clutching the school backpack that the social worker had picked up from his house. Occasionally, our eyes met in the rearview mirror, and I tried to smile reassuringly. At home I made hot cocoa. It was always our family's comfort drink, and the three of us sat at the kitchen table. Timmy, I began, choosing my words carefully. Your parents did something wrong, something against the law, and that's why they're going to need to be away for a while. His eyes widened. Are they bad guys? The innocent, direct question hit me like a punch. How do you explain to a child that his parents are not monsters, but desperate people who made terrible decisions? No, my love, they are people who made a mistake. Good people sometimes do bad things when they are scared or desperate. It was about the money, wasn't it? Timmy asked, surprising me with his perception. They fought a lot about money. My mom always said that if you helped more, we wouldn't be in this situation. I felt as if I had been slapped. Was this how Brenda portrayed me to her own son? As a stingy grandmother who refused to help enough? Timmy, Grandma and Grandpa helped your parents for many years, Richard explained, his voice gentle but firm. We gave them a lot of money, more than we could afford actually. But sometimes, no matter how much you give, it's never enough if the person doesn't know how to manage it. Timmy stirred his spoon in the chocolate, creating little whirlpools. I know. I heard them arguing sometimes. Dad said it was just one more loan, and Mom said, you owed it to them for being your only son. Every word from Timmy was a painful revelation of how we were seen by my son's family, not as generous people who sacrificed their own financial security, but as a bank that never closed, a source of resources to be exploited. Timmy, do you know how long you'll have to stay here? He asked, changing the subject. The lady from social services said it could be a long time, That it will depend on the judge. He looked up suddenly alarmed. Are you going to send me away too? Never, I replied firmly, reaching out to hold his hand. This is your home now for as long as you need. In the following days we established a new routine. We enrolled Timmy in the public school near our house, the same one where Richard had been the custodian before he retired. We bought new school supplies, some clothes, and tried to create an atmosphere of normalcy in the middle of the chaos our lives had become. A week after Jason and Brenda's arrest, we received a visit from a lawyer. Do you want to see them? He said, sitting in our living room. They are being held in preventive detention while the case proceeds to trial. And what do they have to say? Richard asked, his voice harder than I had ever heard it. They claim they were forced by drug traffickers, that they were being threatened and saw no alternative. They're asking you to pay for their defense. I let out a bitter laugh that I didn't recognize as my own. After everything they did? After trying to turn us into criminals, they still think they can ask us for money? The lawyer seemed uncomfortable. They also mentioned that if you don't help, they might claim that you knew about the drugs, that it was a joint plan. Richard stood up so quickly the chair almost fell over. Get out of our house now, he ordered, pointing to the door. And tell my son that if he dares to accuse us, I will testify against him myself. Tell him we have the recordings of the calls to the police, that we have witnesses, that we discovered the drugs and immediately asked for help. Tell him we are not the idiots he thought we were. After the lawyer left, Richard sat down heavily on the sofa, covering his face with his hands. It was one of the few times I had seen him cry in all our years together. Richard, I whispered, sitting down beside him, do you think we did something wrong in raising him? How did our son become this person? He shook his head slowly. I don't know, Margaret. Maybe we gave too much. Maybe he never learned that actions have consequences. Maybe because we were always there to fix everything. That night, while Timmy slept in the room that had been his father's, Richard and I made a pact. We would not allow our grandson to grow up with the same sense of entitlement that had corrupted Jason. We would teach him responsibility, hard work, and above all, integrity. The next morning, I received a call from the prison. It was Jason. Hello. My voice came out hesitant, uncertain. Mom. Jason's voice sounded different over the prison phone. Harder, colder. I remained silent, not knowing what to say to the son who had tried to use me as a drug mule. You destroyed our lives, he continued when he realized I wasn't going to speak. Do you know what happens to people like me in jail? Do you know how long I could be in here? I felt my knees weaken, and I sat down in the nearest chair. It was surreal to hear my son, the child I raised, accusing me of suffering the consequences of his own actions. Jason, I finally managed to say, you put illegal substances in our bag without our knowledge. You and Brenda planned to use your own parents as drug couriers, and now you blame me for calling the police? It was our only chance, Mom. We owe money to dangerous people. They were going to hurt Timmy after you refused to pay for his school. Don't you dare. I interrupted, my voice trembling with rage. Don't you dare use your son as an excuse. We helped you for 6 years. 6 years we gave you money, we didn't even have to support a lifestyle you couldn't afford. And when we finally said no to a ridiculously expensive private school, you decided to turn us into criminals. There was a silence on the other end of the line. How's Timmy? He finally asked, his voice suddenly smaller. He's with us. He's safe. He's in school. And for the first time in a long time, he's in a house where he doesn't have to hear constant arguments about money. I want to talk to him. That's not up to me anymore, Jason. There's a legal process now. The judge will determine when and how you can have contact. I heard a heavy sigh. Mom, please. You need to help us. You need to pay for a good lawyer for the family for Timmy. No, I replied, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. It's over, Jason. The money is gone. The trust is gone. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. You're going to regret this, he said, and I could hear the anger rising again. When I get out of here. If you're threatening your own parents now, Jason, I suggest you think carefully, I interrupted. Any threat will be reported immediately to the authorities. I'm going to take care of Timmy and give him the stability he deserves. That is my only responsibility now. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Richard, who had heard everything from the kitchen doorway, came over and hugged me in silence. We stood like that. Two old people supporting each other, trying to process how our only son had become a threatening stranger. The weeks turned into months. Life with Timmy brought a new and surprisingly comforting routine. He went to school in the morning. I prepared his lunch and helped him with his homework. In the afternoon, Richard took him to play soccer in the neighborhood field or to ride his bike. At night, we sat down to dinner together, something that rarely happened at his house, as we discovered. Timmy told us that he usually ate alone, watching TV while his parents argued in another room. "Grandma," Timmy asked me one night as I was tucking him in, "why did my parents fight so much about money if you were helping them?" The question caught me by surprise. Timmy was much more perceptive than we imagined. "Well, honey, sometimes people want more than they can have. Your parents wanted a big house, new cars, trips, and expensive school for you. But they didn't have enough money for all of that. Grandpa and I helped a lot, but it still wasn't enough for the lifestyle they wanted." Timmy looked thoughtful. "At his house, my mom always said it was your fault for not helping more, that if you really loved us, you would give more money." Every revelation from Timmy was like a small stab. It was painful to discover how Jason and Brenda had portrayed me to their own son, as a stingy villain, not as the grandmother who had sacrificed her own financial security for them. "Timmy, love is much more than giving money. It's being present. It's teaching what's right. It's setting boundaries when necessary. Sometimes saying no is the hardest way to love someone." He nodded slowly. "Like when you don't let me eat chocolate before dinner because you're worried about my health?" "Exactly like that. Honey, I love you too much to let you grow up believing you can do anything without consequences." As the months passed, Timmy blossomed. His grades improved. He made friends in the neighborhood. And little by little, the questions about when his parents would come back became less frequent. Not for lack of love, I realized, but because he was finally experiencing the stability that every child deserves. Jason and Brenda's trial was scheduled for 6 months after the arrest. As key witnesses, Richard and I would be called to testify. The idea of testifying against my own son made me physically ill. But I knew it was necessary, not just for justice, but to show Timmy that even painful decisions are necessary when it comes to doing what's right. A week before the trial, I received a letter from Brenda. I was surprised. She had never written to me before. With some apprehension, I opened the envelope. "Dear mother-in-law, I hope this letter finds you well. I know you probably hate me now, and you have every right. What we did was unforgivable. Using you and Richard like that. I have no excuses. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I've been thinking about all the times you helped us and how I always wanted more. How I spoke ill of you to Timmy. How I manipulated Jason into asking for more and more. The truth is, I never learned to live within our means. I always believed I deserved more than I had. And when you and Richard were there, ready to cover our debts, it was easy to keep going like that. I'm not asking for forgiveness or money for lawyers. I just wanted you to know that despite everything, I'm grateful that you are taking care of my son. He deserves better than the parents he has. Brenda." I reread the letter several times, trying to find the manipulation between the lines, but for the first time since I met Brenda, her words seemed sincere. I showed the letter to Richard, who read it in silence. "What do you think?" I asked. He sighed deeply. "I think prison can change people. Some for the worse, others maybe for the better. Do you believe her?" "I don't know, Margaret, but I think it's the closest thing to an apology we're going to get." On the day of the trial, I put on my best dress, not out of vanity, but out of respect for the solemnity of the moment. Timmy stayed with the neighbor. We decided he didn't need to go through the trauma of seeing his parents in court. The courtroom was surprisingly full. Apparently, the case of elderly parents being used as mules by their own children had attracted the attention of the local media. I sat next to Richard in the front row, my fingers intertwined with his, looking for strength. When Jason and Brenda entered, handcuffed and wearing prison uniforms, my heart sank. Jason seemed to have aged 10 years in 6 months. He was thinner, with deep dark circles under his eyes and a beard he had never had before. Our eyes met for a second before he looked away, unable to face me. Brenda, on the other hand, looked directly at me and nodded slightly as if acknowledging my presence. There was something different about her. A humility that had never existed before. The trial began with the charges being read: drug trafficking, attempting to use third parties without consent for the transport of illegal substances, association with drug trafficking. Every word was like a stab. When I was called to testify, my legs were trembling so much that I needed to lean on the railing to get to the witness stand. The prosecutor asked me questions about the years of financial support, about the recent refusal of the tuition, about the strange reconciliation and the invitation for the trip. Mrs. Martha, the prosecutor asked, when exactly did you realize that something was wrong? I swallowed hard, glancing briefly at my son before answering. It was when Jason called during the trip to ask about the bag. He never, in his entire adult life, ended a call by saying he loved me. That wasn't normal. I felt that something was terribly wrong. And what did you do then? My voice failed me. I asked my husband to stop the car. I opened the bag and found the packages hidden among my grandson's clothes. Packages of drugs. And what was your reaction upon discovering this? My voice failed again. I told my husband to call the police. I knew I was reporting my own son, but they were willing to let us go to prison in their place. What choice did I have? The defense attorney, a young man in a cheap suit, stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Martha, you claimed that you supported your son and his family for years. Are you aware that by doing so you may have created a financial dependency that led them to take desperate measures when you suddenly cut off that support? I felt the blood rush to my face. I did not suddenly cut off support. I said no to a specific request, an expensive private school, after 6 years of paying for practically all of their expenses. And even if I had cut everything off at once, does that justify turning your own parents into unwilling drug traffickers? The lawyer backed down a bit at my outrage. I'm not suggesting a justification, ma'am. I'm just establishing the context of the situation. The context, I replied, my voice firmer now, is that two 40-year-old adults decided that the solution to their financial problems was to sacrifice their elderly parents. After my testimony, it was Richard's turn. He told his version with the same dignified calm he always showed in times of crisis. When he finished, the judge called Jason and Brenda to testify. Jason went to the witness stand first. He couldn't look at me as he spoke. We were desperate, he began. We owed money to dangerous people who threatened to hurt our son. When my mother refused to pay for the private school, we realized that she had finally set a limit, that we could no longer count on her financially. And did that justify putting drugs in her bag without her knowledge? The prosecutor asked. Jason finally looked at me, his eyes full of tears. No, nothing justifies what we did. I betrayed the people who were always by my side. I deserve to be arrested just for that. The sincerity in his voice surprised me. It didn't seem rehearsed or manipulative. Brenda testified next. She confirmed everything Jason had said, but she went further. It was my idea, she admitted, leaving the court in silence. Jason hesitated, but I insisted. I said that his parents were already elderly, that no one would suspect them, that it was our only way out. I manipulated my husband in the same way I manipulated my in-laws for years. The trial lasted 3 days. On the final day, after the closing arguments, the judge announced his decision. Jason and Brenda Carballo, this court finds you guilty of all charges. However, considering the lack of a criminal record, the spontaneous confession, and the apparent remorse, I sentence you both to 4 years in prison with the possibility of progression to a work release program after serving 1/3 of the sentence. 4 years. My son would spend 4 years in prison for something he himself had chosen to do. Timmy would grow up during those years without his parents, and I, a 67-year-old grandmother, would be responsible for raising a preteen. After the trial, Jason's lawyer asked if we would like to speak with him briefly before he was taken back to prison. I looked at Richard, who nodded slightly. In a small room next to the courtroom we found Jason, still handcuffed, but without the presence of guards inside the room. Mom, he began as soon as we entered. His voice choked with emotion. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What we did is inexcusable. Why, Jason? I asked the question that had haunted me for months. Why would you do something like that to us after everything we did for you? He lowered his head. Because for years you were always there to clean up my messes. Whenever I made a mistake, you fixed it. I think I never really grew up. I never learned to deal with the consequences of my own mistakes. And now? Richard asked, his voice calm but firm. Now, Jason took a deep breath. Now, I want you to take better care of Timmy than I ever did. I don't want him to grow up like me, believing the world owes him something. His custody will still be decided by the judge, he said. I know, and I'm going to recommend that he stay with you. Timmy needs stability. Better examples than Brenda and I were. Those words coming from my son took me completely by surprise. For the first time since the beginning of that hell, I saw a glimpse of the boy I had raised, a glimpse of integrity and responsibility. I'm going to try to be someone better when I get out of here, he continued. Someone that you and Timmy can respect again. When the guard came to get Jason, I did something I hadn't planned. I hugged my son. It was a quick hug, still laden with pain and distrust, but also with a small hope that maybe something good could come out of all that disaster. On the way back home, Richard and I remained silent for a long time. Do you think he's really changed? I finally asked. Richard considered for a moment. I don't know. Prison changes people, but not always for the better. I think only time will tell. And us? What happens now? He took my hand on the car seat. Now we raise our grandson. We give him what he needs, not necessarily what he wants. We teach values, responsibility, integrity, and pray that we do a better job this time. When we got home, Timmy ran to greet us, anxious for news. What happened? When are Mom and Dad coming back? We sat down with him in the living room and explained as gently as possible that his parents would be away for a few years, that he would live with us during that time. Are they really going to jail? He asked, his voice small. Yes, honey. They did something wrong, and now they need to face the consequences. Timmy was silent for a moment, processing the information. Can I visit them? That will depend on the family court judge, but probably yes, with some limits. He nodded, surprisingly composed for a boy his age. Okay, I understand. That night, as I was making Timmy's bed, he asked me a question that would stay with me for a long time. Grandma, do you still love Dad even after what he did? Timmy's question caught me off guard. How do you explain the complexity of a mother's love to a 10-year-old boy? How do you say that it's possible to love a person deeply, and at the same time be devastated by their choices? Timmy, I began, sitting on the edge of the bed. A mother's love is complicated. I love your father. Yes, I will love him forever because he is my son. But that doesn't mean that I accept or approve of what he did. Loving someone isn't giving them a free pass to do bad things. Timmy thought for a moment, clutching his worn-out teddy bear. Like when you love me, but you ground me if I do something bad? I smiled. Exactly like that. Honey, I love you too much to let you grow up believing you can do anything without consequences. And will you love me even if I do something really, really bad one day? Like Dad did? I felt my heart ache with the fear in his voice. Always, Timmy. Always. Nothing in the world could change that. He nodded, seeming satisfied. Then I think it's okay that Dad is in jail as long as you still love him. The following weeks were dedicated to establishing a new normal. The social worker visited regularly to check on how Timmy was adjusting. The family court judge determined that for now, Richard and I would have provisional custody, with the first visit to his parents scheduled for 2 months after the start of their sentence. On the day of the visit, Timmy was nervous, changing his clothes 3 times before settling on a superhero t-shirt that Jason had given him on his last birthday. Do you think they'll be happy to see me? He asked as I combed his rebellious hair. It will be the best moment of their last few months, I answered honestly. The prison was a cold and intimidating place, even for a visit. Timmy squeezed my hand tightly as we passed through the metal detectors and security procedures. The visiting room had concrete tables fixed to the floor and hard plastic chairs. Jason entered first. He was wearing the orange prison uniform and looked even thinner than at the trial. His eyes lit up when he saw Timmy, and for a moment I could see the boy he had been before life and bad choices transformed him. Timmy knelt and opened his arms. Timmy hesitated for only a second before running to his father, wrapping him in a tight hug. I felt tears in my eyes watching that reunion. No matter how many mistakes Jason had made, he was and always would be Timmy's father. Brenda entered right after. She was different. Her hair, once carefully dyed and styled, now showed gray roots. Her face, without the makeup I never saw her without, looked older and more tired. But when she saw Timmy, her smile was genuine. I sat at a nearby table, giving them some privacy, while Timmy animatedly told them about his new school, the friends he had made, the dog Richard was considering adopting for him. "Grandma helps me with my homework every day," I heard Timmy say. "And Grandpa is teaching me to play chess. They said that when I'm good enough, we're going to a tournament." Jason looked at me over Timmy's head, his eyes communicating a silent gratitude that words could not express. After almost an hour, a guard announced that the visit was ending. Jason hugged Timmy for a long time. "Be good to your grandparents," he said. "Listen to what they say. They are wiser than I ever was." "When are you coming home, Dad?" Timmy asked the question I knew he had been holding back. Jason looked at me again before answering. "It's going to take a while, son, but when I come back, I'm going to be a better father. Promise." As Timmy said goodbye to Brenda, Jason approached me. "Mom," he said quietly, "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but please don't let him forget me. Don't let him think I don't care." "I would never do that, Jason. He will always know that you love him." Jason nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you for everything, for taking care of him, for not letting him go to a shelter or a foster family." "He's my grandson," I replied simply. "And you, with all your mistakes, are still my son." On the way back home, Timmy was unusually quiet. "Are you okay, honey?" I asked, watching him in the rearview mirror. "They seem different," he finally said. "Different house, smaller. Dad always seemed so big. And Mom was always put together with makeup and her nails done. Now they look like normal people." I understood what he meant. For a child, parents are almost mythological figures, larger than life, infallible. Seeing Jason and Brenda in prison, vulnerable and diminished, must have been a shock to Timmy's vision of them. "They are learning some difficult lessons," I explained. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to realize what really matters." "Like what?" "Like family? Like being honest? Like taking responsibility for our mistakes instead of trying to make other people pay for them." Timmy was silent for the rest of the way, lost in thoughts that I could only imagine. The months turned into a year. The bi-monthly visits to the prison became part of our routine. Timmy adapted surprisingly well to his new life. His grades were excellent. He had friends, played soccer on Saturdays on a local team that Richard started coaching voluntarily. The social worker who visited us regularly commented on how Timmy seemed happier and more confident than when she first met him. "You are doing an incredible job," she said during one of her visits. "It's not common to see children adapt so well after a trauma like this." "He's strong," I replied. "Stronger than I was at his age." Jason and Brenda, meanwhile, seemed to be changing in prison. Jason got a job in the prison library and began studying to finish his college degree through a distance learning program. Brenda got involved in a crafts program and even started giving sewing classes to other inmates. During visits, they always asked about Timmy's school, his activities, his development. They seemed genuinely interested in his life, not just worried about when they could get it back. On one of the visits about a year and a half after the arrest, Jason asked to speak with me alone for a few minutes. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot," he began, his tone more serious than usual. "When I get out of here, I don't want you and Dad to support us again." I raised my eyebrows, surprised by the statement. "I want to do things the right way this time," he continued. "I'm studying. I got a qualification in accounting. I'm going to look for a job, live within our means. No cars we can't afford, no expensive private schools." "That's good to hear, son. And I want you to promise me one thing," he said, leaning forward. "If I go back to my old habits, if I start asking for money or trying to manipulate you, say no immediately. No matter what excuse I give you." The sincerity in his eyes moved me. It was the first real sign that Jason was genuinely committed to changing. "I promise, I replied. But I hope I don't need to keep that promise." He smiled a sad but honest smile. "Me too, Mom. Me too." That night, I told Richard about the conversation while we were washing the dinner dishes. Timmy was already in bed, exhausted after a day at the water park. "Do you believe him?" Richard asked, drying a plate. I want to believe, I answered honestly. But I know that real changes take time, and that good intentions in prison are different from facing temptations in the real world. Richard nodded. Do you know what worries me the most? What? What will it be like for Timmy when they get out? He's so well adjusted here with us. The transition is going to be difficult. It was a concern I also had. Timmy, now almost 12, was thriving under our care. The idea of disrupting that stability distressed me. Let's take it one day at a time, I said, repeating the mantra that had sustained us during that turbulent period. One day at a time. Timmy's 12th birthday arrived on a sunny Saturday in September. We prepared a small party in the backyard. Nothing extravagant, just a few friends from school, a homemade cake that he helped me make, and a table of simple treats. The difference from the elaborate parties that Jason and Brenda used to throw was noticeable. Are you sure you don't need help with the party costs? The social worker had asked during her monthly visit, clearly concerned about our limited retirement budget. We're fine, Richard replied with a smile. We discovered that children need more attention than expensive parties. It was true. Timmy, who used to have themed parties in children's halls with expensive gifts and professional decorations, seemed happier with our simple homemade celebration than I ever saw him at previous parties. Are you sure you don't need help with the party costs? The social worker had asked during her monthly visit, clearly concerned about our limited retirement budget. We're fine, Richard replied with a smile. We discovered that children need more attention than expensive parties. It was true. Timmy, who used to have themed parties in children's halls with expensive gifts and professional decorations, seemed happier with our simple homemade celebration than I ever saw him at previous parties. Are you sure you don't need help with the party costs? The social worker had asked during her monthly visit, clearly concerned about our limited retirement budget. We're fine, Richard replied with a smile. We discovered that children need more attention than expensive parties. It was true. Timmy, who used to have themed parties in children's halls with expensive gifts and professional decorations, seemed happier with our simple homemade celebration than I ever saw him at previous parties. Are you sure you don't need help with the party costs? The social worker had asked during her monthly visit, clearly concerned about our limited retirement budget. We're fine, Richard replied with a smile. We discovered that children need more attention than expensive parties. It was true. Timmy, who used to have themed parties in children's halls with expensive gifts and professional decorations, seemed happier with our simple homemade celebration than I ever saw him at previous parties. This is the best birthday I've ever had, Grandma, he told me as we hung up the banners together. Even without the bouncy castle and the cotton candy machine? I asked, half joking, half serious. He shrugged. It was fun, but I barely saw my parents during the parties. They were always busy greeting guests or arguing about something that wasn't how my mom wanted it. The wisdom of that child sometimes surprised me. At only 12 years old, Timmy had already learned lessons about values and priorities that his parents took decades to begin to understand. And even then, they needed a prison for that. Timmy's big gift was a new bicycle. Not the latest model, but a good quality one that Richard had restored from a used bike we found at a second-hand store. Together, they had sanded, painted, and repaired that bike for weeks, turning the project into a grandfather-grandson activity that created more memories than any store-bought gift could. In the middle of the party, while the children were playing soccer in the backyard, my cell phone rang. It was the prison's number. Jason had received special permission to call on his son's birthday. Mom, is Timmy nearby? Yes, Jason. Do you want to talk to him? Please. I called Timmy, who came running, his face red from the rush and smiling from ear to ear. It's your father, I said, handing him the phone. Timmy chatted animatedly for a few minutes, describing the party, the friends, the bike that his grandfather had repaired for him. Yes, Dad. I'm really liking it, he said in response to something Jason asked. Grandma and Grandpa said that maybe we can go fishing next holiday at their neighbor's farm. When the call ended, Timmy gave me back the phone. Dad wants to talk to you again. Thanks, Mom, Jason said when I took the phone, for giving him a normal happy birthday. I know it's not the party that Brenda and I would have thrown, but it's exactly what he needs. Simple things made with love, I said. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I don't know how to thank you for everything you're doing. Keep studying. Keep improving. That's the best thanks you can give us. Mom, there's something else. I filed an application for the work release program. The lawyers think I have a good chance with good behavior in the courses I've taken here. I felt a lump in my chest. A work release program meant that Jason would be out of prison during the day, returning only to sleep. It was the first step towards his full release, which was scheduled for just over a year from now with reductions for good behavior. That's good, son, I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. I know it's complicated, he continued, clearly sensing my hesitation. Timmy is well established with you now. I don't want to mess that up, but I want to start being part of his life again little by little. Of course, I replied automatically while my mind spun with the implications. Let's talk about it on the next visit. After I hung up, Richard noticed my worried expression. What happened, Margaret? I told him about Jason's application for the work release program. Richard was silent for a moment, thoughtful. It was to be expected, he finally said. We couldn't keep him away forever. He's the boy's father after all. I know. It's just that Timmy is doing so well, so balanced. I'm afraid everything will be destabilized when Jason starts coming back into his life. Richard took my hand. We can't control that, dear. We can only do our best and be there for Timmy no matter what happens. 2 weeks later we received the news. Jason's application had been approved. Starting next month, he would be on a work release program, working during the day at a cooperative that employed ex-convicts and returning to the prison only to sleep. We sat down with Timmy to explain what that meant. Your father will be able to see you more often now, Richard explained. You can spend a few hours together on weekends, maybe even go out for ice cream or to the park. Timmy's eyes lit up. Will he be able to see my soccer games? Probably yes, if it's during the allowed time. And my mom. Your mother is still in a closed regime facility, I explained. You'll still visit her every 2 weeks as always. Timmy nodded, absorbing the information. Memoirs of Aunt Martha.